Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we're tackling a topic that's been on my mind for quite some time, and I feel like now's the right time to discuss it. We have the Xbox 20th anniversary coming up, and certainly we'll have a lot of ways to celebrate that in the coming week. But in today's video, I wanted to talk about a very special era in gaming, one that my early 2000s viewers out there can relate to strongly. We're talking about the era of EA Sports Big. The crazy, most wild arcade sports titles that we've ever seen are now just gone. And we need to visit this because it's an era of gaming I'd love to see come back nowadays, whether it be through remasters, remakes, or just people making new games. That would be great too. So if you're new here, consider checking out some of our other content. I would highly appreciate that. Subscribe. And now let's talk the era of EA Sports Big. So it begins again in the early 2000s with games like Splashdown Rides Gone Wild, right? This is a way that they really spiced up, say, the racing genre. Or Sonic Riders. Again, hey, you don't like driving cars? We'll play our Sonic racing game, which effectively plays the same way, but it's Sonic, so you don't care. And then you had games like Outlaw Golf, which stepped into the mix. Just how wild, crude, crazy can we get with what is viewed as, by many, let's be honest, and I say this as someone who golfs, a very boring sport. I got this for $1, by the way. It was dirt cheap, but it's this, again, crude, raunchy, dirty take on the sport. But a lot of people gravitated towards it because it wasn't traditional golf. And it wasn't until Midway entered the picture here with this heavily stickered version of NHL Hits Pro that we saw an audience purely captured by this style of sports game. I grew up not being a fan of sports. I love them now, but I didn't like the simulation style games. I didn't like playing MLB The Show, NBA Live, NBA 2K. I kind of played them because they were the thing. It was an easy way to fit in, but it never was truly enjoyable to me. What was enjoyable was MLB Slugfest, NHL Hits. Those types of games resonated with me because I don't know how else to say this other than there was a level of violence and an arcadey nature that made it more fun than just playing the sport. In NHL Hits Pro, you'd get power-ups and you'd fight people on the ice in like a suit of armor. That was crazy. Or MLB Slugfest, where you'd set on fire and then you'd punch people on the base path. It was that extra layer where it played just like a common sports game, but there was this wild nature to it that kept me engaged. And it brought people like myself into the sport. Gone Without a Flash. And then it's really who defined it for many, having that perfect melding of sports and arcade. That was the Street series. NFL Street, NBA Street. These games defined childhoods. And they didn't stop there. There was FIFA Street. The Street Sports series needs to come back. We've seen attempts like NBA has NBA Playgrounds now, which is this big head version of NBA Street. And I don't know how else to put it other than it's not that good. And it does not capture that same energy, that same magic that these did. The reason they did is two things. They embraced hip hop culture. And also it was about traveling, building your team. So you'd see these players in a completely different light where suddenly I'd recruit, like in this game, Paul Pierce onto my team. And we'd be doing these crazy tricks, going between the legs, flipping over people's backs, dunking and breaking the rim. And it wasn't just about putting points up on the board. It was about how stylish you were. Sometimes you would do point challenges. Who would ever get the highest amount of points would win. And it was also about game breakers. So you could rack up the point multiplier. And instead of scoring 1 point, 2 points, you'd score 4. And it changed that dynamic as well. NBA Street V3 was a definitive title for me growing up, as I said in my recent Games Hall video, and it's only going to get further expounded upon here in this video. I mean, for example, in the Nintendo version of Street V3, you could have Mario, Luigi, Peach on your team, and that was dope. So it also talked to a market there, but it just served such a strong purpose. However, FIFA Street was really the last hurrah we saw of all of that. You know, we saw on the 360, EA tried to bring it back. I thought they did a really good job. They made a fun career mode. The gameplay was great. And again, it just disappeared. And not because it was bad, but because what you're seeing with these companies is they decided, hey, let's put the Street into our mainline FIFA title. And that's kind of what they went for, but it's just not the same because these experiences were crafted with this Street mindset. It wasn't, let's make a soccer game first and add the Street. It was, it began on the Street. So let's roll with it and turn this into the way the sport was played, which involved a little bit of an edge. It involved bending the rules where you would, instead of carrying the ball, you would like go through their legs and flip over their back, or you'd shove them on the ground. There was an edge to these games. But it wasn't just sports games that EA Sports Big did. They did fighting games like Def Jam. Def Jam Vendetta is still a very competitive, highly sought after game. There's a reason I don't have a physical version here to show you, because the GameCube version, which is the best way to play at 60 FPS, is multiple hundreds of dollars. And I understand why. It is a competitive game on the level of like Smash Bros. Melee for a lot of communities, and it's pretty niche. It didn't really get the love it deserved until much later on when people realized, hey, we had something pretty unique back there. For those unfamiliar with Def Jam, it was again a bunch of hip hop artists beating the hell out of each other. And much like how Street v3 made you feel like this is still playing basketball, but there's more here that's enticing to me, I think Def Jam was a melding of a ton of ideas that shouldn't have worked. Like, we're going to have hip hop artists beat each other up in very brutal manners. We're going to have a huge character roster with a deep fighting system, and it's going to be 3D, and it's going to look good, and it's going to be at 60 FPS, and it all ended up working out spectacularly. But the thing is now these games are sorely missing nowadays, and it's because of the way that games are made. Today, on the PS5, the Series X, and even Xbox One and PS4, these games are so expensive to make that companies are hesitant to experiment. It's why instead of getting another one of the NHL Hits Pro, you're going to instead get on the latest NHL entry from EA, that outdoor 3-on-3 hockey rink. And what a lot of people said was, this is kind of cool, but at the end of the day, it's just playing the same NHL game, except it's 3-on-3. It didn't have the power-ups, the pickups, the major game-changing design points that were in an NHL Hits game. So it felt lackluster. It felt like it under-delivered, and you go, I may as well go play the simulation version of all of this. And we don't have that nowadays because these games were easier to make. There's a reason why this got up to V3. It's because it iterated with each and every entry that came out. There's a reason why we saw multiple NFL Streets, multiple FIFA Streets, multiple Slugfest games. It's because just like the sports games we see nowadays, they were iterative. They would release annually alongside the major sports games, but the difference was they were competitive. But the sports scene is consolidated dramatically at this point in time. And we were talking like there was the bigs on Wii. I remember that was a pretty impressive one. But now there's like one definitive sports game for every sport. And that's why I think EA Sports Big needs to come back, because their reach was far and wide. They got people into sports, but it doesn't even matter beyond that, because even if you didn't get into sports, you could still be an NBA Street fan. You could still be an NFL Street fan, an Outlaw Golf fan. You could still be a NHL Hits Pro fan. You didn't have to love the sport to get into it, and that's what made these games so attractive, especially to me as a kid growing up who, I love my parents, but at times they kind of forced me to play sports that I didn't want to play. Like, Matt, go sign up for the baseball team. It's like, I don't really want to do that. I want to go play games. These games made me appreciate the sport a little bit more, but more than anything, it brought me into the fold a little bit and let me just play an arcaded version of it. Like, I remember in MLB Slugfest 2003, they had a stadium you'd go to, which was Atlantis. And it was a crazy moment where you went, this is so cool. I'm just hitting bomb home runs that are lighting on fire in Atlantis with a bunch of people rounding the bases that have humongous heads. And it's all I could ask for growing up. But it's an era of gaming that I don't know if it will truly succeed as strongly nowadays, but it's one that I would love to see come back. We see so many ports nowadays, like Star Wars has always been a victim of ports, right? We saw Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, Bounty Hunter, KOTOR, we saw Episode 1 Racer, so on and so forth, all come back via ports. Stubbs the Zombies is back through a port. I would just love to see these classics get ported back into our current library, because I think they would be enjoyed by an audience, and it's one of those low risk, high reward approaches. And of course, since NBA Playgrounds exists, there is reason to believe that we could see more of these games. But EA Sports Big just does not get enough talk for how monumental they were back in the early 2000s and what they did for this industry. And so I wanted to celebrate them in today's video. Of course, we're going to transition next week into full-on Xbox mode. So I hope you're all prepared for that. There's a lot of exciting stuff on the way that I've been thinking of since we started catching on to the anniversary. So keep your eyes peeled here. A lot of content to share with you. And I'm looking forward to your thoughts on EA Sports Big, so please do fire away. But until next time, take great care of yourselves, and I'll talk with you very soon. Peace out.